If it was that bad, why didn't Cassie just leave? Guys, this is a sentiment that is repeated over and over online, and if we don't understand the depths of how this manipulation actually happens, then we're gonna be here again. It's just gonna be another Diddy in waiting. So here to help us understand the depths of where that spider web goes is my co-host for this special series, criminal behavioral analyst, Laura Richards. All right, Laura, we're going to talk about Dr. Dawn Hughes, who's a forensic psychologist that wasn't allowed to say the words coercive control. So talk to me about her testimony, why it was important, and what are the things that actually have weight to it.
Yeah, so Dr. Dawn Hughes is credible in terms of she's a clinical and forensic psychologist. So her role is as a blind expert. She's not going in to talk about specifics to do with this case. She's there to educate the court. And the judge did rule that she would not be allowed to talk about coercive control and that she could not testify to the credibility of the victims, right? So what she talked to was domestic abuse, sex crimes, and the trauma bond, so the relationship. But what she effectively talked about was how victims can become entrapped. She talked about trapped, but I always talk about entrapment because it's what keeps her there. So she did talk about that cycle of abuse. I call it re-grooming. So an abuser will groom the victim, and like with Sean Combs, Cassie's already groomed before she even meets him, right? She knows who he is, she knows he's a big deal, and here he is lavishing attention on her, makes her feel special. So she's already been groomed to Sean Combs, then there's sexual interest in her, then she falls in love with him and she wants to make him happy and she wants to please him. So that's why she goes along with the freak-offs. So Dr. Dawn basically sets a context of how victims become trapped, what the cycle of abuse looks like, i.e. when there is something like a violent event that happens, afterwards the abuser might apologise, buy the person gifts. So with Cassie, we know she was bought lots of bracelets. She actually said she had so many bracelets that she felt shackled by them. And in the freak-offs, you know, she'd get gifts before, gifts during, and gifts after. That's part of the re-grooming. So that cycle of abuse is important because it talks to why she remained in the relationship, why she texted him after a violent event, why she had even sex with him after she said that he raped her. That's very common when you've got this power imbalance and when you've got, you know, a very powerful abuser and the victim being totally entrapped by them. So her testimony, you know, she talks about the coping mechanisms as well of why and how victims cope, that sometimes they would take drugs or there'd be substance misuse to numb. Mm-hmm. And we know with Cassie, that's why she was taking those drugs. She never did drugs before Sean Combs, but she actually talked about that so that she could disassociate from what was going on, and probably for the pain as well at times. And Sean Combs didn't like her taking too many drugs, so he was trying to control that. And so again, Dr. Dawn Hughes can't talk about specifics, but she can talk about the general, what we see in terms of the patterns for victims and perpetrators. So she also talked about what I would call violent resistance, that quite often you might have a victim fighting back. Then they learn that actually that makes the abuser even angrier and it's even worse. So they stop fighting back. And that's what we saw in the timeline of Cassie's abuse. We see the video in 2016, the hotel, the Intercontinental, where she goes into the fetal position. She's learnt not to fight back because it makes it worse. So effectively, she's explaining those things so the jury can understand, well, why doesn't someone leave? As we saw with the hotel event, she did try and leave, and look what happened. She did try and leave, and then he threatens to release the sex tapes, the freak-offs, her biggest fear, and that's the coercion. So she's really trying to educate people because there are so many misconceptions about what happens when there's an abuser and when there's a victim.
Thank you for explaining that. So because your world, you are the one that is literally going out and changing laws on coercive control, unfortunately, the law in New York right now doesn't allow coercive control to be brought into the courts.
Because they chose not to legislate. I do want to make that point. Albany had a chance to after Dirty John. After we'd produced the documentary, I went to Albany, I spoke to legislators, we had a law drafted, they chose not to move it forward. This is the repercussion of that. right? It means in the legal framework it doesn't exist. So the judge gives clear instruction to Dr. Dawn Hughes, you cannot talk about coercive control. That's a big problem. It's unfreedom. You don't have agency, you don't have autonomy. Everything is controlled by someone else. You die inside. You don't know what your purpose in life is. It doesn't matter what you say or what you do, you don't matter. And so you start to shut down. So the abuser will say the things the victim wants to hear, and we have to remember that often the victim is still in love with that person and they want to believe them, and therefore they give them the benefit of the doubt it's not going to happen again until the next time when it happens again. But often we see self-abandonment. So with coercive control, we see the victim self-abandon and put the offender, the abuser's priorities above their own.
This just highlights even more the importance of your work. Like when I met you, you taught me about coercive control, and you were telling me that you were passing laws, but it never really quite hit me until like really seeing it in reality. In that if the law was passed and they were able to use this right now, this case would actually be handled a little differently. And so you actually have on your website a list of signs to see if you are in a coercive controlling relationship or not. Are you okay if I just quickly read them out actually? Because I think it's really important that anyone listening, again, I really want to make sure that women take these episodes and use it and learn. So you've got number 1, isolation. Number 2, pressuring you to do things you don't want to do. We've spoken about that. Inserting in relationships. What do you mean by that?
So it could be trying to take over your relationship with your best friend, your mother, the people who you're closest to. They will try and destabilize those relationships. Maybe stopping you going out with your friends or distancing by saying, well, they're sluts, they're this, they're that, they're the other. And often that's what happens with, you know, in these cases, the victim is very isolated and they lose friends along the way. And often they don't know why that is. But what I know from my work, it's most oftentimes because the abuser has inserted in those relationships, said things, done things, destabilized the relationship, and then the relationship ends. And that creates the isolation again.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And then it goes to your next one, which you actually have, which is criticizing and verbal abuse, gaslighting you.
So this is a reality distortion. When you see something, so you're cheating on me, I saw you cheat on me, you were with her, and he says, no, I never did it, never happened. And you start to question your sanity, your reality, and then you might believe them if they're so strong in what they're saying and they're very manipulative or they give you an alternative narrative, then that reality distortion, you might buy into it and then you stop trusting yourself.
Threats. We've obviously seen a lot of alleged threats that Diddy's already made to a lot of people, not just Cassie. Charm. Let's face it, I'm sure Diddy has a lot of charm. I mean, look, I've told you this before. I have been to a P. Diddy party. I was invited and went to his 50th birthday party. There was electricity in the air. He feels like larger than life. And Jay-Z was there, Beyonce was there. I mean, it was, you just felt like you were in a presence of grandeur. And so when charm, I mean, he obviously had that in spades.
And charm actually has multiple functions. It increases likability, but it also, for the victim, they know this person's magnetic. Who's going to believe me? Here he is in a room holding court, everyone loves him. So that ability to be able to charm and turn it on and turn it off, the victim feels that they won't be believed, particularly if you've got a big personality. And we have to remember abusers aren't abusive all of the time. And that's another myth, a misconception. So when they're charming, they're great to be around. And most victims will say, I just don't want the other part of them. I want to be with them, I love them, I'm emotionally invested. I just don't like it when they abuse me and when they do X, Y, and Z. So there is a myth and a misconception around that. Here he is in a party, everyone likes him, but this is him and what he does. Sometimes when people aren't looking, but we know with Sean Combs, he also did it in hotels and in front of people because he didn't fear the consequence. That's much more likely what that's about.
And that bar kind of gets moved, right? You do one thing, you see, you get away with it. You do another thing, oh, you see, you get away with it. You do something else, someone threatens you, you pay them off, oh, I can just pay them off. Like it just keeps going. Okay, so you have rules and regulations.
This is the double standard. I can have many relationships, but you can't. And a lot of victims see that double standard. They will question it to begin with. And as Sean Combs said, I'm Puff Daddy. I have many rules. So you have to abide by my rules. And if not, you're out. And Cassie feeling, I really want to be with him. He could get another woman in my space, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to do what he says. But that double standard with a fear of consequence, i.e. when she left in LA, there was a full-on physical assault. That was a very clear showing her, this is what I'm capable of, and therefore she would think twice again before she tried to leave him.
Mm-hmm. Well, allegedly, when he was caught on video in the hotel, they were doing a freak off and he had already beaten her, and that's when she tried to leave. And so part of the argument that I've heard is, how can you say, why didn't she leave? You have a video of her trying to leave and you see what happens.
Exactly, and that's what the prosecution are proving, right? They're showing this is what he does when she tries to leave, so they're answering that question. But what Kerry Morgan's testimony adduced was the fact that after that very violent assault, Cassie went round to Kerry's, and they were best friends at that time. Kerry's testimony was that Sean Combs kept blowing up their phone, like 50 calls, incessant, right? So that talks about fixation and obsession. That's his mindset, and that's what she's presenting in that testimony. But he turns up at the address, he's hammering down the door. Cassie's terrified. Kerry calls the police, but Cassie says, I don't want to get him in trouble. I don't want to ruin his career. So this is what many women tell me. I don't want to ruin his career. Well, why does she say that? Well, he's texting her as well. And he's texting her saying, don't leave me alone. Don't abandon me. I've got 6 kids. Help. Please help. And so Cassie does start to now help him by making sure that there's not going to be a problem, i.e. she's not going to cooperate with the police. But we also know it wasn't just that. He actually got James Cruz, who was the president of Bad Boys, to call her up and say, please speak to Sean Combs. It's in your best interest. He got a Sony rep to do that too. And then he got an attorney to call her and say, it's my advice to you in your best interest to talk to Mr. Combs. So this is where, again, he's using other people. And Kerry very clearly sees what's going on. And Cassie is terrified and terrorized. And she's trying to now placate him, and he's presenting as the victim.
And it must be a real, mind flip where you've seen this guy, he's all powerful, he's the king, it's my kingdom, and then he's begging. That is such a weird, warped trap where I can imagine in that moment you're like, oh my God, I didn't see this side of him. And so that kind of then allows you to lower your guard.
Yeah, because he's presenting vulnerability. And most women lean into that. Right, and we put their needs above our own. And I say, hold your boundary. Do not put their needs higher than yours, and do not put your safety lower than his feelings and his feelings of discomfort. He knew what he was doing. They were manipulators, and on a young, impressionable Cassie. And we must remember, he's also her boss. She has a contract with Bad Boys Record, and that's the bit that, for me, this is a workplace situation as well. He's the boss, he holds power, as well as there's an intimate relationship going on, and he's abusing her, and he's doing terrible things to her, and other people are seeing it, trying to do the right thing and intervene, like Kerry did, and then being caught on the wrong side of it. And in fact, Kerry ended up being paid $30,000, but it was Cassie who negotiated that, and an NDA. So she's muzzled and silenced, and that was why Kerry didn't continue the relationship, because she felt in a way that Cassie had sold her out. But she didn't understand the cycle of abuse, the coercive control. And that's what I want people to really understand when our friends going through it, lean into it. Keep the contact, the safe contact, keep talking to them. Don't isolate them further by withdrawing your friendship.
We have disrespect.
Yeah, I mean, when you love someone, you don't disrespect them and devalue them. So again, it conflicts with, oh, I love them and they love me and they say that I'm their queen. Well, if someone's your queen, which is what Sean Combs said about Cassie, you don't treat your queen like this. So that it's not congruent, it's not consistent.
Stalking.
Yeah, and often, like Sean Combs' behaviour after the violent assault in the hotel, his behaviour then goes into that fixated and obsessed mode that he's calling incessantly. He has to control Cassie. You know, how many of those behaviours, well, we know there was a Jamaica violent event that Kerry was present, seeing Sean Combs beat Cassie again. And then he's driving round, because they fled, trying to find them. And this intensity in his head, it can be coercive control and it can be stalking. Post-separation, when someone leaves, when somebody starts to fixate and get obsessed and they're intruding in their lives. So you could have multiple charges. And with the coercive control law, it was written that and, you charge for stalking post-separation. You charge for criminal damage. You charge for a GBH and a grievous bodily harm. You charge for attempt murder. It's and.
Physical abuse. I mean,
this is where it's a little bit different from Keith Raniere, because we've got very clear physical abuse, caught on video, and the defence have had to lean into that. With Keith Raniere, they were trying to say, the same defence team, well, he's still, a nice guy, he got some things wrong, but he's a pretty nice guy. He's trying to put good things out into the world with NXIVM. It's a self-improvement thing. With Sean Combs, they can't say that, right? They can't, because we've got the video. And that's why it was very important for the prosecution to play that up front. This isn't about speculation. He may have been violent. It's he was violent. That is accepted. And physical violence is normally used as a reinforcer. So it's when the other tactics don't work, then you get violence that's targeted and or sexual violence. And on the power and control wheel from Duluth, Minnesota, physical and sexual violence is around the outside of the wheel, and all the other behaviours of coercive and controlling tactics are on the inside of the wheel, because they only use the physical and sexual when they need to reinforce.
Got it. And then you have economic abuse.
Yeah, the financial. So in Cassie's case, and Dawn Hughes, she could have talked about that generally, that we see financial abuse, but it looks different in different cases. But with coercive control, you will see it. It happens in most cases, the same as sexual violence happens when there's coercive control. So in Cassie's case, it's the fact that what money is she earning? She's meant to be on a record label with him, and she's meant to be producing 10 albums, right, that could send her into the stratosphere. But she produces nothing. She does produce songs and she does create songs, but he doesn't put them out there. He doesn't produce them and market them. So when the freak-offs become her job, that's what she said in the testimony, he's limiting her ability to earn money. And everything is tied up with him. He controlled her finances and he controlled her phone. So that testimony from Regina, Cassie's mum, of him taking the phone, punishing her when she doesn't do the thing that he wants, punishing her by not giving her money when she doesn't do the thing she wants. Her whole agency and autonomy is wrapped up on him, in him. She's dependent on him. And that's where you see a lot of coercive controllers use finances. It might be the victim has to work 2 jobs. It might be 3 jobs. It might be they're not allowed to work at all. And it might be they had a baby and now they have to stay at home and they're being given an allowance. And this allowance is like $100 a week because it's just for the food for you. And you're not allowed food for the baby. I've seen things like that before, that clothes-wise it's prescribed. You're not allowed to buy clothes, but if you do, it has to be in certain stores or it has to be in a Goodwill store. So all these conditions are layered in, but that talks to the coercive control. So economic abuse, financial abuse does feature, and it features in this case. And that would be part of her civil suit settlement, right? He stopped her from earning. He stopped her from being as big as Rihanna or Beyonce, and I believe she had the talent, having seen her and seen her perform. So part of that money is about what he stopped her from being able to earn.
Yeah, I think she recorded almost like 9 albums worth of songs, and she literally didn't release any.
None of them were published. I think a couple were internet published, but that was it. So what that tells us is he wasn't interested in her music career. He was interested, in my view, in keeping her all for himself as a sex slave. And did she get money after each freak-off? I don't know what's been adduced around that, but I would imagine she got money for hosting parties or things that he authorised. But how is she sustaining her lifestyle? We know that he paid her rent, he paid for her car, he had her medical records. Was he putting money into her account? And therefore he's keeping her, almost as an employee, but not to make music. So he's stopping her from reaching her full potential, and that's financial abuse.
We have sexual abuse.
9 times out of 10 it's present when there's coercive control, and oftentimes it's coercion, right? No one's putting a gun to someone's head, but there's a fear of consequence. If they don't do what they're being told or asked to do, there's a fear of consequence. You know, it might be that they get stonewalled, i.e. they're put on the silent treatment if they don't give sex. And a lot of men will say things like, well, you took a vow when we got married to love, honour and obey, and that means having sex with me. And a lot of women think that that's part of their duty. Marital rape became a crime in the UK in 1992, only in 1992. In France, we saw with Giselle Pellicot what happened when her husband was sedating her, drugging her and inviting men in, right?
Yeah,
to rape her.
Years, right?
Yeah.
Years.
But in the French law of rape, there's no consent specified. So even though there was video evidence of him bringing these men that she didn't know in, and she's clearly sleeping, the question of consent, well, she didn't consent to that. She didn't even know it was happening. So again, we see lots of variations, you know, and I don't believe with Giselle Pellicot, he was the perfect husband by any means. I think he was very controlling, right? Even when she felt she was losing her mind, she was going to the doctor, he was going with her. This is gaslighting, where she thinks, I'm forgetting things. Well, it's because he was drugging her under the act of something pseudo-nice, giving her ice cream before she went to bed and bringing her something that she loves, but he'd laced it with drugs. And even to do that to a person that you love, who you shared your life with, the mother of your children, you know, and the jury saw those videos, because without it, we know that most women aren't believed. And even the judge said to her, don't call it rape. And she challenged him. And she said, this was not with my consent, this is rape, and I will call it what I want to. But what I'm showing you is how the deck is stacked against women to prove these cases. Even in Giselle Pellicot's case, you know, multiple men being charged and Dominic Pellicot being charged, but would he actually be convicted even with the video evidence? So that's, you know, the legal standard, and what's in the law really does matter. But most laws are not created by women to protect women, they're created by men to protect men.
Oh, bit of a mic drop there, girl.
Mornings can get so busy that you don't even have time to wash your face. You barely have time to brush your teeth. So as a woman, the last thing that you're thinking about is how to take care of your skin. But of course, the thing that we care probably one of the most things about is our skin. So I want to talk to you about OneSkin. Guys, it is so damn simple. All you have to do is wash your face with this bad boy and then moisturize with this one. It's so simple. It's made my life so easy, so fast, and I feel so damn proud of myself because I'm actually taking care of myself and my skin, so I feel good. Get 15% off with coupon code LISA at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code LISA. So go check out OneSkin, nice and easy for all you working mothers, working women, busy women, whatever you're doing, you don't have the time, OneSkin is the cure. Go check them out.
But it ties in, because even when we just think about what's going on for Cassie, you know, I 100% believe shame must switch sides. That it's the shame of the perpetrator doing these things. It shouldn't be the shame and humiliation for a woman having been subjected to this. And I want shame to switch sides.
Mm-hmm. Actually, he had threatened to release the videos of Cassie. Do you think that was a fake threat? Because don't you think that would have revealed something about Diddy?
I mean, to the astute person, that would have revealed a lot about him. But would we have seen him on camera? Would we have seen even the video being attached to him? Is his face on camera? And look, I haven't seen these videos, but what I believe from what I've understood of the trial and what was put before the court, he was always behind the camera in these situations. A couple of times he did put money on the bed, but that's what the Punisher said. But was he caught on camera doing that, or is that just the testimony? But for Cassie, he's made the threat, and she sees that when he says something, he follows through. And that's really important, that we understand that he's not just someone who says things and doesn't follow through. He says it and he does it. And that also matters, because when I risk assess cases, the credible threat is, do they say things and then do it? There's consistency, right? So when you've got someone who, oh yeah, Laura, whenever he says he's going to do something, he always does. where Cassie saw him following through in each situation. So for her, this absolutely does control her. If he had leaked those tapes, would it have traced back to him? I just don't know. But I think the fear and I think the threat is credible when you have to treat it as such. And that's what she did. And that's what her mother did as well.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one is love bombing, which you somewhat explained. I mean, the jewellery, you said she had so many bracelets. There was like cuffs.
Yeah, I mean, it can be with words. You know, I love you, I don't want to hurt you, and I made a mistake. Come on, give me a break. I made a mistake, I'm not going to do it again. So most women give the person the benefit of the doubt, but my view is always when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Maya D'Angelo, right? And if they've done it once, they're going to keep doing it, particularly if there's no repercussion. And love bombing and grooming, it's part of the same pattern. So even, like I said, when there's been a violent assault, money, you know, gifts, lavish holidays, let's go on this vacation, part of that is still love bombing, so that you get this cycle. And most people don't see it as a cycle, that there is a very clear pattern. And when I do the DASH risk assessment with women, the pattern is drawn out and they can't ignore it. There it is on the page, that it's gone on for a very long period of time, and it's not always when alcohol and drugs are involved. And, you know, he said he was sorry, he doesn't want to hurt me, doesn't want to upset me, but here's the physical evidence on the video that he did that, and he bought the video to hide the evidence. This is someone who knows what they're doing. It will happen again. But that love bombing, it's saying the things that we want to hear in those moments when we've been traumatized. And that trauma bond, only you two know that situation. And even that creates the bond, right? That you both went through something extraordinary of what happened, although it might be routine in the pattern of the relationship, but it can actually push the victim closer to the violent abuser, not further away from, particularly if they're isolated and they've got no one else to turn to or speak to.
Laura, thank you so much for breaking that down. I think apart from highlighting these are all the ways that poor Cassie and the things that she had to go through, it really does highlight for anyone at home that may be wondering, am I in this type of relationship? And I never want to be where Cassie ended up. And so how can I save myself? And I think you've just beautifully laid out the kind of signs that people can really look out for to see if they're in that type of relationship. If people want to know more information on coercive control and want to know more information on you, or even like they want to get help, where can they go to start getting help?
Well, I'd say, you know, thelaurarichards.com is my website that you just read from, and I do have very specific quizzes on there for what if you think you're being coercively controlled, or what if you think your friend's being coercively controlled? You know, what do I do? And there's very clear advice that if you are being abused, then you can use the DASH, and there's organisations you can signpost to. Right? There's the domestic abuse hotline here in America. There's the helpline in the UK, talk to an expert. But I do put a lot of information out on Instagram as well, at Crime Analyst, very short videos just as explainers of, you know, what's love bombing, or the butterflies in the stomach is a warning sign. And what I see, Lisa, I mean, the response has been incredible, because so many women are messaging me saying, I never even knew that. I thought the butterflies meant love. And I always say that's because the Hollywood movies teach us that. So a lot of my work is about explaining and undoing all the things that you've been gaslit on as women. That in the Hollywood movies, in the Disney movies, we wait for the man to rescue us and sweep us off our feet, right? And we want people to know they need to rescue themselves when they're in a situation. No one else is going to come along and rescue you. So that's why giving information and knowledge is power, and then you can start to take your own agency back.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, girl. Where can people follow you? You said your Instagram. What's your Instagram account?
So at Crime Analyst or at Laura Richards 999. I put out a lot more promotional videos on YouTube and Instagram, and I mean promos as in short bite-sized clips that are digestible, because I know this is a lot. You know, it's a lot of information, and we're using this particular trial and Cassie's experience to spotlight these things rather than just talk from a legal standpoint of what's going on at the trial. And that is really important, because the light bulb comes on for people at different times. You know, I've had women contact me to say, I never had the butterflies with my husband. And I always questioned the relationship, because I thought you had to have butterflies. But now I feel really reassured. And I'm so happy, and it's closed that questioning down. And then I've had other women say, I felt the butterflies, I said no, no, no on those to go on a date, and then I said yes, and worst decision of my life. And I want people to step into their gut instinct. What's your body telling you? And listen to it. Because even when we get pregnant, our body does these incredible things we don't program it to do, it just knows. So it also knows when we're around someone who's dangerous or risky, it knows it before we consciously do know it. So that's why I always say, you know, listen to Crime Analyst, the podcast as well, because I have a lot of episodes explaining these things, but I always end with be curious, ask questions, and always trust your instincts. They're my 3 golden rules.
Love those. Guys, that information that Laura just broke down can literally save yours or someone else's life that you may know. So I just want to applaud Cassie for being so damn freaking brave, for speaking up, putting her name out there, and speaking, in my opinion, on behalf of other women that are also struggling. And so to end this episode, I wanted to read a quote that she released after she had finished her testimony. She said, "This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. The more I can remember, the more I will never forget." So on behalf of Cassie and her bravery, today's episode is dedicated to her. Thank you guys for being here. Please, if you haven't subscribed, smash that subscribe button down there. And until next time, be the hero of your own life. Peace. If you want to learn more about how on earth this type of things happen, and you want to learn the science so that you never get trapped, and you want to watch more of this Diddy series so that you can understand deeper what coercive control actually looks like, then click here right now. He swung a frying pan at Cassie's head. He's accused